Hello, and welcome back to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast. Jeff Griesemer, Executive Director of Child Rescue Network, will be sharing with us today about public relations, the corporate benefits of cause marketing, and identifying potential partners.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast, where your host, KIRSTEN Bullock, interviews nonprofit CEOs and executive directors to share what's working. This podcast is produced every 2 weeks, and show notes are found at www.nonprofitleadersnetwork.com. Come back often, and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. Any links we talk about will be listed in the show notes. Now, let's get on with the show.
I'm your host, KIRSTEN Bullock, and I'm here today with Jeff Griesemer with Child Rescue Network. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Jeff founded Child Rescue Network in 2004 after seeing firsthand the impact of the incredible damage inflicted on 2 innocent children who were abducted and finally rescued after 5 years. Since then, the organization has grown to be a national leader in empowering children and families to help prevent child sexual abuse, abductions, and victimization through educational programs, community awareness, and strategic partnerships. You can read Jeff's full bio on the podcast page at nonprofitleadersnetwork.com. Jeff, could you kick us off by sharing a little bit about Child Rescue Network and some of the things that you're involved in right now?
Well, absolutely. Well, as you said, our real focus is preventing child sexual abuse and abductions and victimization, such as human trafficking. So we do a lot of community outreach, going into PTAs and churches and homeowners associations and apartment complexes and moms clubs, wherever we can gather parents together and really educate them on a new way of thinking when it comes to protecting kids from sexual predators.
What is your service area right now?
Well, we cover all of Central Florida with active programs, but we also distribute safety information on a national basis. And just to kind of share a little bit about what we're trying to do is, as I said, change that message. For a long time, stranger danger has been the message that we've given kids. Don't talk to strangers. And that message is quite honestly flawed in pretty much every possible way. First and foremost, parents need to understand that 93% of kids that are victimized, 93% are victimized by someone they know. So we've created this whole program called Empowerment, Not Fear, to really go in and teach the reality that's going on, and then to focus the message on how to recognize potentially dangerous situations and teaching kids how to do that and giving them specific action plans when possible, which can be done on a pretty frequent basis, actually. But it goes beyond that. It goes into strengthening the family and creating those open lines of communication between the kids and the family. We actually have a program we call Take 15, where we encourage parents to just take 15 minutes a day and have these open-ended conversations with their kids so that they can see what's going on in their lives. And we talk about building confidence in kids, the importance of instilling that sense of self-worth in children, and teaching them about personal boundaries and how to respect boundaries and to react when their boundaries are being crossed. And the cool thing is that kind of skill set goes way beyond just protecting them from sexual predators. So we're pretty proud of the programs that we're putting out there. It's encouraging to see some of the results.
Great. Now, you've been at this for about 12 years now, if I'm doing the math right.
Right.
What would you say the biggest obstacle was when you were first getting started?
Well, yeah, I think that finding the right people was probably my biggest challenge at the initial startup phase, because it was definitely more challenging than I anticipated. A lot of folks have great intentions, and we're dealing with a cause that involves children and protecting kids, and who doesn't want to support that? But the issue came about when finding those people who not only had the passion for the cause, but also had the time and the dedication to really help in a personal manner. And I think that finding those people was a little harder than I anticipated to begin with.
Okay. And what would you say that your greatest success has been in that time?
Well, we deal with a lot of issues. And of course, one of the things that we work with are missing kids and missing families of missing children. And, of course, anytime you deal with missing kids, the opportunity to help reunite a family with a missing child it's kind of hard to beat, as far as a success story goes. But that being said, our main focus is prevention. And so I think when we go out and we educate parents, and it's really amazing, Kirsten, because we see the light bulb go off when we're sharing this message of empowerment. And I think that really has a real, I think that really says a lot about our success. Being an organization that focuses on prevention, measuring outcomes is kind of challenging. But one of the things we have shown in follow-up surveys to our program, parents who've been through our training, 98% have said, because of what I learned, I changed the way I protect my kid. And that's pretty powerful. It does a couple of things. One, that the parents are looking for this information. And I think two, the program makes sense to them. And that's probably the biggest thing is that parents understand what we're trying to tell them. And as soon as we say, stranger danger is not really the message we want to give, to kids. We want to give them the knowledge and give them the skill sets to help them make the best decisions possible, whether they're dealing with a stranger or that familiar face. Because, 9 times out of 10, that threat is coming from a familiar face. So seeing the program and the impact it has on families is really, I think, what I would call our best success. And thinking about that long term and how this can really start lowering the numbers, because I didn't share with you, but 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually victimized before they're 18 years old. You think about the families out there. I mean, 25% of young girls, and it absolutely doesn't have to be this way. A lot of it's ending the silence and really raising awareness that this is a lot more common than people think. And the only way we can fix it is to get our heads out of the sand and really start addressing the problem and addressing it in a new way, because the old way hasn't worked very well.
Mm-hmm. So how did you come to the realization that the need has changed, or maybe the need was never, the stranger danger message was may have never been relevant?
Yeah, I think stranger danger, that came about at a time when we were just starting to hear about big stories in the news. Adam Walsh had just been abducted from a store and murdered, and things like that were happening. And I'm sure it was created with the best of intentions, but it's really been a flawed message all along. And unfortunately, it's got that memorable ring to it, and so it's still being taught in places. And that message just really has to change. And as soon as you understand the reality, you understand why that has to change.
Right. And how did you come to the realization that it needed to change? I'm thinking of other executive directors, folks leading organizations who may have a message that they know needs to change. They're not quite sure what to change it to, and they're not quite sure how to start making that shift. Any advice for them? Well,
part of it was just my personal feelings that the message didn't make sense to begin with. And then doing research and discovering the true numbers and where the real dangers are coming from added to that. And then speaking to professionals, speaking to counselors, the mental health counselors and the teachers, and trying to really get an understanding, and talking to parents about what was really happening, and realizing that by changing the message, we can have a much greater impact. So I think doing research is a big part of it. You can't just say, I think it needs to be this way.
Right.
A couple things to back you up at least.
Great. And when you started changing the message and started getting it out there, what kind of vehicles did you use to help you with that?
Well, a lot of it is the same way we kind of market the brand, and brand marketing is important, just as important for a nonprofit as it is for a corporation.
Absolutely.
It's speaking as often as possible, getting out in the community and talking to different groups, from civic, Kiwanis, Rotary, to professional groups, to chambers of commerce. Really starting to get the message out there, and of course through the programs as well. But taking it even further than that, and we deal a lot with the media, and kind of, we're the experts in the area. So when there is a local story that we can provide some appropriate content for, well, we'll reach out to local media and let them know that we're available for an interview, and make ourselves available for those interviews whenever they happen to call. And if you do that over time, you start to develop these relationships with the media. So they start calling you when they've got a story and they want to comment on it. We also make sure that we're out there writing for publications and different magazines and newspapers and things like that, sending in articles. And they don't always get printed, but a lot of times they do. And that really kind of helps, as I said, raise the awareness of the issue, raise awareness of what we're trying to change about it and what needs to change about it, and raising awareness of the brand itself.
Great. And one of the things that you said that stood out, sharing appropriate content with media. Mm-hmm. How do you assess what's appropriate?
Well, media, whenever they have a story and there's some kind of a local tie-in. So if there was, in our case, for instance, if there was an attempted abduction somewhere, we can call them and say, look, we've got some safety tips for parents to help teach their kids to recognize those potential dangers. If there's a story about human trafficking, we can reach out and say, did you know this is going on in our local community? So that's what I mean by appropriate content. Tying something in that the media can use. It has to be kind of relative to the story that they're trying to produce.
Mm-hmm. So timely, relevant, and newsworthy?
Absolutely.
Great. And in these 12 years of working on this organization, I'm willing to bet that there's been a time or two where something has happened and you've thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. Whether you consider it a failure or a learning opportunity. Do you have any examples that you could share with us?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are some. I think probably the one that stands out for me that I felt like was probably my biggest mistake was, I came from outside the nonprofit world. My background was radio. I was managing radio stations and doing broadcasting for 20 plus years, and that was my background. And I came into a nonprofit setting, and I had a kind of a different idea as to how to raise money, and that was cause marketing. That was associating our brand with a company so that they get highlighted, they look like heroes, and we're able to provide these programs out in the community for free. And it really kind of is mutually beneficial. And I focused a lot of attention on that, and quite frankly ignored some of the traditional ways that nonprofits raise money. And we missed out on some opportunities. I think we've learned a little bit from that now, and we apply for more grants, and we're working on building those donor relations and some of those things that traditional nonprofits have been doing all along, and we just kind of were late to the table, so to speak, in implementing some of those programs to help fund some of the things we're trying to do.
Okay, I would imagine that there were a few instances where, coming into the nonprofit world from a different sector, there are probably a few different surprises that you ran into. Oh, absolutely. Any others that stand out?
Not glaringly, anyway. I like to think we haven't made too many huge mistakes along the way. I think that not having that nonprofit background has hurt me a little bit as we've grown the organization. But I am smart enough to know what I don't know, to a degree. And so I've tried to find people who do understand how nonprofits have worked for the years and what makes a successful nonprofit, and the steps you need to take to make sure that things are being done exactly the right way. And I was always big on transparency and making sure that people understood that, when you give us $1, we're going to spend every amount that we can, to use it wisely. And I think last year we were about 85% of every dollar going to programs. So we're proud of those sort of things now. And I think it's going to help us in the long run. I think, on the other hand, we've also benefited from the fact that we haven't relied solely on traditional nonprofit fundraising opportunities, and we have gone after corporate sponsors in a way that is perhaps a little more aggressive than traditional nonprofits would think about.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably where coming in with fresh eyes has been a benefit. You're not confined by notions of what it's supposed to look like.
Certainly,
so maybe you try things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that has helped. And my background being in broadcasting, broadcasters make their money through advertising. And I saw our opportunity because we're getting in front of parents. We're speaking to the same people that a lot of for-profit companies would love to reach. So if I can take their funds and pay for the program, I'm more than happy to give them some exposure and, help enhance their brand, cause marketing, build customer loyalty. A lot of studies have shown that the overwhelming majority of people would rather support a company that gives back to their community. And so if I can highlight a company for doing that, it could benefit them. It can benefit their bottom line. If it's done correctly, it could even, provide some type of return on investment. For instance, if we're out and we happen to, be giving information out on our program and we can share, a coupon or a brochure from one of our sponsors, that can help drive traffic into their doors. And it's neat because in most cases, we aren't dealing with the foundation or the charity side of a company. We're dealing with the marketing department. And those dollars are quite often more available than the charitable side sometimes. However, that being said, if I'm taking marketing dollars from somebody, I need to deliver some kind of marketing result. And I think that, that good feeling of giving back to the community is a part of it. But there's also that what's in it for me, mentality as well. And rightly so. They're spending money. Mm-hmm. They need to get some kind of result for it. And if I can show them that by giving money to my organization, they can benefit from that, and help the community at the same time, it's that ultimate win-win, and they're going to continue to fund my program.
Right. And so what is that benefit that you promote? I'd imagine eyes on the logo, but are there other things that you measure as far as benefits?
Yeah. The brand recognition, enhancing that brand, no matter what that brand is, when you tie into an organization that is helping to prevent child sexual abuse, or any kind of organization, really. If you're dealing with animal shelter, well, lots of people love animals, and if you're a company that is giving back and openly giving back to a particular charity, that looks good for you. And it's not. And to be honest, I've had some companies who said, I don't want to look like I'm exploiting the charity, that I'm standing up and it's not like standing up in church and yelling out, look, I'm $50 going into the collection plate, that's not what we're talking about. But when companies will give back to charities and promote that fact, they're helping the charity, for one, because most don't have marketing budgets of any kind. And so when a company uses an advertisement to support a charity, that's got extreme value. When it's done correctly, it's enhancing that brand. It's building customer loyalty. I don't remember the numbers offhand. I think the last report I saw was, I think it was 87% of Americans said when it's a similar product, similar price, and I know one supports charity, that's the one I'm going to patronize. And more companies are starting to understand that communities and people really expect them to be giving back and supporting the community. And if they're doing that, that makes them much more friendly to customers and makes customers much more loyal to them when they understand that, when I'm buying this widget, I know a part of that cost is going back to help my community, to protect animals, to protect kids, to provide shelter for homeless. There's a wide variety of things that companies can get involved with that really can have a direct impact on their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
We also, of course, promote them through a website. Our website gets a lot of traffic these days, and so we feature different sponsors on the website on occasion. Social media is another great opportunity for us because that helps get the word out for us, and we encourage our partners who are with us to do the same sort of thing. So we might be sharing information and highlighting them and giving them a little credit for it. And they're also sharing our information out to their customers and clientele. So, these work best when they're mutual operations that really benefit everybody.
Mm-hmm. So if there's somebody listening in who's thinking, oh, this sounds like a interesting thing that I'd like to try, do you have any tips for looking for potential sponsors? You mentioned looking for ones that are in alignment with the mission. Yeah,
I think that's the big part of it. You want sponsors who have some kind of passion for the mission itself. And some are natural tie-ins. When you got, I think there's some bottled water companies that donate water to third world countries and other places. And, you've got people like, I think it's like Tom's Shoes, I believe, that you buy a pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes. So those are, obviously direct tie-ins to their mission, their vision. And some can be a little less obvious. I think that, for us, you have people who want to reach families. We do that, and that kind of opens up, a pretty wide variety of potential sponsors for that. Everything from banks to law firms to toy stores, can have an impact there and reach potential audience. But yeah, it really has to be something that the company has some passion for, and I think that people will spot it if it's fake.
Mm-hmm. And I remember Darden in Orlando, and then Yum Brands here out of Louisville, Kentucky. They will often go in and help nonprofits build kitchens because that's what they know how to do. It's something that they can help with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and sometimes it's not a financial deal. Sometimes it's companies can volunteer their personnel, to allow them to volunteer for organizations. And I know that Disney, has a great program that they do. Their volunteers not only get paid, but they earn extra dollars for the charity and give their time as well. So, I think there's lots of ways for companies to get involved. And I think that nonprofit leaders have to understand that as well, that they can't, going in, and we all need money, we all need funds, but there's other ways that companies can help you out. And sometimes that is through their promotions. Like if they send out a newspaper flyer every week, well, maybe include part of that space for an advertisement for the charity. That can easily be done, and that's got extreme value to the charity. And so there's ways like that outside of just giving dollars, there's tie-ins to products where if we sell, for all the widgets we sell this month, we're donating 10% to our favorite charity. And I think that's another good way that companies can get involved, where it's not necessarily, it is taking from their bottom line. The idea is that they're going to sell more of these things because people understand that when I buy, a portion of that money is going to a charity.
Lots of great ideas. Well, Jeff, do you have any closing words of support, encouragement that you'd like to provide for our listeners?
Well, I think that anybody who gets involved with a nonprofit, they have a passion, and it sometimes is a struggle out there to get things going, especially for a startup organization and to get things moving. But you just have to remember that you have that passion, keep that vision in front of you and front and center, keep moving forward. And while it may not happen as quickly as you would like, if you just keep pushing forward, it does happen. Things, fall into place, and the people that you need to meet come into your life. And so just keep that passion and keep that faith and keep moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
And for more information about Child Rescue Network, you can visit their website at childrescuenetwork.org. And thank you to all of our listeners for everything you do to make the world a better place.
Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast with Kirsten Bullock. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, nonprofitleadersnetwork.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. Join us next time for another edition of the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast.